vulnerable children without compromising their dignity. These are the issues shaping the... Thanks so much for staying with us. Now, the government and trade unions have reached another milestone in discussions on the compensation of public sector workers, with a formal agreement now signed. Tonight, we look at what the development means for workers and the wider public service. Joining me now is teacher Clark Griffiths, president of the Jamaica Civil Service Association. And of course, we are also being joined by St. Patrice Ennis, president of... Well, let's begin with teacher Clark Griffiths. And we also have St. Patrice Ennis, president of the Jamaica Confederation of Trade Unions. Good evening to both of you.
Good evening, and good evening, President, and thank you for having me.
All right, we are to be joined by St. Patrice Ennis, the president of the Confederation of Trade Unions, but we have the head of the Jamaica Civil Service Association with us. Top of the evening to you again, and welcome to Lead Story.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure being here, and to my 30,000, I say thank you for their patience and confidence that they have instilled in me, so that I was able to reach this milestone. It is indeed a milestone for the Civil Service Association and the wider Confederation of Trade Union members.
Indeed. Just remind the viewing public, teacher Clark Griffiths, did you sign with the immediate, when it was announced previously that the JCT was signing, did the Civil Service sign on at that time as well?
Right, so the Confederation consists of 12 member unions. The JCSA is a part of it. So we have JCSA, JALGO, UAW, NWU, UTAS, USAW, and quite a few others. So what we did today was sign on behalf of the Confederation. The JTA is also a part of the Confederation of Trade Unions and would have been at the table with us since 2024.
So you would have signed off on that 80,000 one-off payment, 5% in year one, 5% in year two. That's what you signed off on today.
Correct. So this part of the negotiations was just the salary component. So the salary component consists of the one-off payment for 2025, the 5% in year two, which is 25-26, and 5% in year three, which is 26-27, and also the increment payment that is also 2.5% payable in 25 and 2026 as well. So in essence, is 7.5% for each year, along with the one-off payments for 2025.
So walk us through the process, teacher Griffiths. So the government submits this upgraded offer. Do you always take the offer back to your membership to say this is what's on the table and ask them to vote to accept or to decline?
Absolutely. So this process started in 2024 under our previous Minister of Finance, Mr. Nigel Clark, and we submitted our claim in November of 2024 with the intention that we would conclude negotiations by the 31st of March 2025. Of course, you know that 2 years later, we are just concluding that process. So it has been long, it has been very difficult. We have had started at 0%, as you know, and coming up to elections last year in September, the government moved to 2%. And of course, we're able to get that to be doubled for years 2 and 3, from 2.5 to 5% respectively. So we're extremely happy, and I believe this is the best deal that we could get at the moment, given the fact that when we started negotiations last July, we had in 2025 we had Beryl, and then in 2024 we had Beryl, then 2025 we had Melissa, which decimated the western region of Jamaica. So for us to reach this far, we are grateful, and I think it took commitment on the path of the government of Jamaica and the trade union movement to get this far. We're extremely grateful, and I believe this is the best deal. What we did differently this time is that we sat at the table, we were frank, we were firm, but yet we were committed to make sure that both sides could agree on a settlement, and this is what we had today.
You pointed out earlier that this is just the salary component of the agreement. What are the other components?
Right. So, as you know, in the media, you've heard about the tax on concession, the 15% tax on concession. That is still being discussed. We also have mileage claim. That claim is specifically with the Jamaica Civil Service Association on our claim. We also are discussing qualification increment, which was taken away under the compensation restructuring. And I am still advocating for a mental health day for public servants. Among other things, staggered work hours and flexi work arrangement has started, not so in all the various ministries, departments, and agencies. That was one of the items as well. And we have several other items in the Confederation claim, as well as individual unions that forms the Confederation. They too have their claim before the government. That does not include the salary component of the negotiation.
So help me to understand here, because there seems to be a difference in approach from what you are describing here, what we're hearing from the JTA. You've mentioned the 15% tax and concession, the mileage claim, qualification increments, mental health day, which I want to come back to and talk to you about in a little bit, staggered work hours. How were you able to table these and sign off on the salary component?
Right. So as you know, the salary component is the largest in the budget. And what we have seen in the fiscal policy paper that clearly states what the amount for salaries and retroactive payment is, we were able to use the fiscal policy paper that was approved by the Parliament to negotiate. So we knew the parameter in which we were negotiating, which was $42.6 billion. And that is contained on page 21, part 2 of the fiscal policy paper. So we knew what exactly we were doing. We know how much was available in the budget to pay for wages and salaries. In fact, the projection has been made over a 5-year period, which is why we were able to conclude on and agree on the 3-year wage negotiation rather than a 2-year that was submitted, because the JTA would have submitted a 3-year claim. The JCSA and the Confederation submitted a 2-year claim. And so the government would have proposed a 4-year wage deal. We agreed to 3 years, and we also were able to facilitate the JTA by coming together to agree on a 3-year rather than a 2-year wage deal.
But the JTA is insisting that the government must address its 28-point claim before signing off on the salary component. And I put it to the JTA boss while she was here with us. I believe it was last week. And the issue is, she's saying, look, this is more than about what you're being paid, yes? But I realize that you have been able to table the other components while addressing the salary components. Do you see that as shortchanging your members?
No, we don't see that as shortchanging our members. Bear in mind that the tax prices are going up. Prices are going up. Inflation. Public servants still need to live, and wages have been on since 2022. Since the return of our increment, we have not had an increase in salaries. And of course, what you have seen is that inflation was between 4% and 6% when we submitted our claim. And as you know, since 2026, that has far been eroded. So what was in the budget, since we have tabled it in 2025, our claim was a 6% increase for 2026 and a 6% for 2027. We have managed to get 5% in those years with the 2.5 increment payment. So we have been able to, actually, I think it was a good deal for public servants. Now, let's get the wages out of the way, but there are other items that are non-financial as well as those that are not as significant.
And you are negotiating in good faith with the government.
So we are negotiating in good faith.
But the JTA seems to be taking another route to.
Let me just say this though.
Yes, go ahead.
The JTA current president just came in. The previous JTA contingents were part of the negotiations. I can't speak on behalf of the JTA. All I can say is they were at the table when we agreed to that part of it. So they would have to speak about their claim At the appropriate time.
So
but certainly,
am I hearing from you that previously when they were at the table, they were prepared to table the non-salary components while signing off on the salary component?
what I can say to you is that even though the JCTU were having their discussion on the negotiation, each union still meet with the Ministry of Finance on their claim.
Absolutely, and I get that.
The only common factor is that the JTA and the Confederation were discussing and agreeing on what we signed today prior to the incoming president. I cannot speak after that as to what their stance are, but that's what I'm saying.
I hear you, and I just want to be clear. You're saying there was consensus on the salary component prior to this new JTA president. That's what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. They were at the table with us, yes.
And did they indicate that they would accept this 80,000, 5% in year one and 5% in year two?
Let me just say this though. I believe that you should direct those questions to the JTA.
That's an absolutely fabulous really response, Teacher Clark-Griffiths, and I will do that. I was hoping I could have drawn you on that one, but you caught me. You caught me and slipped there. You caught me and slipped there. So let me press on because I'm almost out of time. We've spoken about the 28-point plan for the Jamaica Teachers Association. Is there anything within the Articles of Association for the JCTU that allows for individual members to negotiate even after the JCTU was signed?
Yes. Each union has this sovereign right to submit a claim to the Ministry of Finance. It doesn't stop them. What I'm saying, though, is that in the clause that is in the JCTU's document is that if any other group gets more than we did, then we return to the table and we should also be granted
to be upgraded. And finally, because we're out of time, this mental health day, I'd love to hear about that.
So what we recognize is that public servants has faced a lot of trauma. Of course, we dealt with COVID, we dealt with Melissa, we dealt with Barry. We had a lot of things that were happening. The grievances that are coming to us, we recognize that a number of our public servants are highly stressed. The workflow, the job function, some of them are overworked. And so we recognize that there's a day that is required for them to recoup. Now, we have departmental sick and vacation, and you may ask, why do you need a mental health day? Now, mental health doesn't mean that it is somebody who is crazy. It means that there is a need for you to take a break from the job. You're not sick. You're not on departmental leave, you're not on vacation leave, but there's a day of rest. I think there's one ministry that does it, they called it a day of pause. Yes, we want to take a day of pause because we have to, when it comes to any form of crisis, we're always on the front line. We are loaded during the crisis, but 1 day per quarter. So it's 4 days for the year.
I'm out of time, but is this 1 day for the entire year that you're asking the government to grant?
1 day per quarter. It's
1 day per
for
quarter.
The year.
All right, thank you, Teacher Clark-Griffiths. She is the president of the Jamaica Civil Service Association, not the JTA. Thank you so very much for joining us. Have a good one.
Jamaica's unemployment rate has fallen to 3.3%, down from 13.2% in 2016. Our government's continued focus on job creation is delivering real results. We are building Jamaica. The time by the Office of the Prime Minister is...
Employers, once a month, you have the power to shape Jamaica's future. By paying your hard 3% contribution, you're not just contributing, you're investing in people, in skills, in our economy. Your hard contribution trains working-age Jamaicans, aligns programs with workforce needs, and secures our future. That's not just contribution, it's transformation. Contribute to heart and to your future.
Watagwan. Watagwan.
Watagwan.
Watagwan.
Watagwan. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8 a.m., 1:30 p.m., and 10 p.m. on CVM TV.
Watagwan.
academic year gets underway, the Early Childhood Commission is putting quality at the epicenter of its agenda for Jamaica's youngest learners. From a revised curriculum and stronger monitoring to teacher development and greater attention to children's early years, the ECC says it's working to strengthen the foundation on which future learning depends. But what will these changes mean for early childhood institutions, teachers, parents, and of course, the little ones? We explore the priorities with the Executive Director of the Early Childhood Commission, Dr. Carleen DeGrasse Deslandes. Yes, Dr. DeGrasse Deslandes, thank you for joining us this evening inside Lead Story.
Thank you for having me.
We were having this conversation in our newsroom, and I was discussing with our producer that every year when it gets to this time of year, September morning, as it is called, as it approaches, we pay particular attention to those going off to high schools, primary schools, but sometimes the younger ones at the early childhood level are sometimes not factored in as much, and so that's why we wanted to have this conversation to place the focus on early childhood. Of course, all the studies now showing us that the early years, this is where it really begins. So talk to us, how are things progressing for back to school for the young ones?
Things are progressing quite well, and I'm glad you mentioned that when it comes to September morning, it is a big thing for Jamaica. As Jamaicans, we like the new bag and the shoes and the uniform and the lunch kit and all of that. So September morning culturally for us is a significant thing. But our planning as the ECC don't start September morning. It starts months before. For example, for us, August is what we call Learning Environment Month. That is when we go into schools every year. We started out about 5 or 6 years ago doing a Learning Environment Day where we go into schools and assist practitioners. Now we have expanded it. We expanded it first to a week, and then about 2 or 3 years ago, we expanded it to the entire month of August. So for the entire month of August, you will see all of our field officers, all of ECC's field staff in one ECI or another assisting with preparation for that September morning.
Indeed. And of course, a few years ago, of course, the entire focus shifted to the first 1,000 days. How is that push for us here in Jamaica?
Well, as you know, the first 1,000 days are the most critical in the development of a child. And so we launched our national 0 to 3 strategy in 2018 when we wanted as a country to place greater emphasis. As you are aware, and all Jamaicans are aware of our daycare settings, whether it's government run or privately owned, we all are accustomed to that daycare, or long ago they used to call it creche setting that our babies go to. And so it is for us in 2018, recognizing that we now had to ensure that there's a clear understanding of what this first 1,000 days mean. It's from conception to age 2. At the same time, what we also placed an emphasis on is what you'll hear is our brain builder centers. These are government operated and funded daycare centers. So the objective is to ensure that we're providing what is necessary: proper nutrition, proper stimulation, safe environment that our children can develop. So the emphasis was going back to this first 1,000 days to truly lay the foundation for learning and for life.
Brain Builder Centers, let's stay there for a few ticks. Dr. DeGrasse Deslandes, how many of these Brain Builder Centers do we currently have functioning in the system? And based on the assessment of the ECC, how many more do we need?
Okay, so we currently have 148 Brain Builder Centers. And we started out, the idea at the time was to have 2 in each constituency, 2 in each community across Jamaica. What we're targeting is in those areas that parents really cannot afford it, really cannot afford that start that we know our children need to ensure that they develop and grow in the way that we want them to develop and grow, so that 25, 30 years down the line, we're not wondering what is happening with our workforce, what is happening with our, well, at 18, what is happening with our CSEC grades. And so the establishment of the Brain Builder Center was to ensure that the government of Jamaica has a stake, has an input in ensuring that our children get the best start as early as possible and be able to be on the right trajectory to reach where they need to reach. Later on in life.
Dr. DeGrasse Deslandis, you used the word that I haven't heard in quite some time just now in your previous response, the word creech. I haven't heard that word in a little while. It took me back, but we know
all of us went to some form of something, right?
Absolutely. And which takes me to how formal the system is, and that has been a challenge over these many years, how informal versus how formal the system is. In terms of registered early childhood institutions, institutions that are registered with the ECC, how many are we looking at, and how many unregistered institutions remain?
So I need to provide a little bit of clarity right there. So we have overall 2,400, just about, early childhood institutions generally operating in Jamaica. Persons confuse the word registered. I prefer to say have applied for registration, and when we say they have attained the legal operating standards, they're issued a certificate of registration. In between that, you have a permit to operate. And in those instances, you find that when our inspectors visit, they're ensuring that there are no health and safety issues that will impact our children and our staff within the ECIs.
All right. So let's get the numbers then. So in total, there are about 2,400 early childhood institutions. About. Yes. How many, based on the various designations you just gave us, let's hear the breakdown in terms of the numbers. So 2,400 in total, yes?
Just over, and of that amount though, let's separate about 140 that we are still working with to submit an application.
All right. So 140 140 of them still needs to submit an application.
Still need to submit an application.
All right.
And a relevant documentation, meaning the medical, police record, food handler's permit, qualification for the persons that are within, and documents such as that.
And Dr. DeGrasse Deslandis, the issue with this is when we don't have them submitting these required documents, is that the state cannot guarantee the safety of the children if we don't know whether or not they're up to standard. Isn't that the concern?
And that is where our inspection process, so that is the application process. We have an inspection process that our inspectors go in, and our legislation speak to 2 inspections per year. In the situations that we have particular concerns, we go in more regularly to ensure that there aren't any safety and health concerns within these institutions. And we also have very close relationships with the Public Health Department and Fire Department, who, as you know, can close portions of, not the entire institution, because then the question is what happens to our children when we close and they have nowhere to go. But they can close, for example, the kitchen if it's not up to standard. So we work very closely with our public health partners and our fire brigade partners to ensure that that health and safety aspect of our early childhood institution is maintained.
Do
And as I said,
you have
we
the manpower to do all the assessments that are required?
I would say you never have the manpower to do all you need to do.
I know you could say that, but I'm asking you if you do have the manpower.
And so I would have to say we don't have the manpower to do all we would want to do. But we are ensuring that all our early childhood institutions are visited within the year. All the critical incidents, because we also have a process that looks at critical incidents and complaints. So we also encourage parents to know the ECIs that they're sending their children to, so that they can identify when there are challenges, bring it to our attention, and ensure that we are on top of it.
Is there a website that they can go to ensure that they are sending their children to a place that has at least been inspected by the Early Childhood Commission? Is there a website?
We have a listing of early childhood institutions on our website, www.ecc.gov.jm.
You didn't give, I don't think we finished the numbers. 140 need to submit of the 2,400,
Right.
which leaves us with 2,260.
We have roughly a little over 300, almost 320 that are completely certified, meaning have attained all the legal standards. We have 12 areas, and you may have heard the 12 operating standards. And so under those you have performance criteria, and that is how we assess when our inspectors go in to inspect our early childhood institutions.
I'm out of time, Dr. DeGrasse Deslandes. So 140 need to submit, 320 completely certified, and the other numbers?
334 that are completely certified.
Yes.
And we minus from that what is left, and they would have a permit to operate. All our schools have at least a permit to operate.
Permit to operate. Thank you so very much. We definitely need to have you back to continue to talk about this very, very crucial component in the education ecosystem.
Definitely,
I appreciate you being with us. Dr. Carleen DeGrasse Deslandes is there. She's the Executive Director of the Early Childhood Commission. All right, that's where we had to leave that segment. We take a break right here, and when we come back, a video circulating on social media has once again raised questions about the interaction of members of the police force with the public. Soon come.
Every time, peace and love in the place. Jamaica want love every time. And that if you say, and that if you do, and that the life if you live. One love, Jamaica. Peace.
The time brought to you by the Ministry of National Security and Peace is...
School expenses adding up? Get ready for school with Chris and Charles. From July 9 to August 31, enjoy a low interest rate on loans of $1.5 and $2 million. Plus, get 25% off the processing fee on loans of $1 million Jamaican dollars and above. You could also qualify for one of 50 ready for school grants worth 60,000 Jamaican dollars each. Visit your nearest Chris and Charles branch or www.chrisandcharles.com for details. When you think loans, think Chris and Charles. Conditions apply.
At Hawkeye, we work hard to develop state-of-the-art security solutions like our new Total Connect smart home automation system that gives you 24/7 access to control your appliances, lights, cameras, and doors using your smartphone, tablet, or PC. As the most trusted electronic security company in Jamaica, Hawkeye has the fastest response times to get to you when you need us most. Trust Hawkeye's Total Connect. Hawkeye, securing what matters most.
Everybody want to save a country right now. One thing about Jamaicans, we might have differences, but we know when something is good for all of us. And when we work together against crime and violence, we are stronger than ever. And that's how we know the Citizen Security Plan can work. That one name CSP. The Citizen Security Plan is an initiative of the Ministry of National Security in partnership with the European Union. It's an all-of-government effort to create safer streets and build stronger communities. Go to mns.gov.jm to learn how you can play your part.
Right here inside Lead Story now, a video circulating on social media has once again raised questions about the interaction between police officers or members of the police force and members of the public. But what exactly are your rights when you're stopped, questioned, searched, or detained by the police? And what should you do if you believe those rights are being violated or have been violated? Tonight, we examine the legal boundaries governing police-citizen encounters and what every Jamaican should know about their rights. Our news department attempted to call Senior Superintendent of Police Dale Garrick attached to the Constabulary Communications Network, but our calls went unanswered. Joining me now, though, Alexander Shaw, attorney at law, and Anthony Williams, who is a senior attorney at law. They call him senior counsel, yes? But before we do, let's have a look at this video. Can we cue it up and start it from the top of the interaction again? Let's have a look at this video.
And why are you bringing us to get processed? What's the offense? What we do? No. See, now the area, and not come from the area. No, that is not. No, that is not an offense. No, that is not an offense. No, it is not. That is not an offense. That is not an offense. That is not an offense. Not an offense. A man live here. That is not an offense. That is not an offense. No, that is not an offense. That is not an offense. No, you can't come tell you say you can't know it. Bad man. I don't know that. I don't want to, brother. Yo, bro, I don't want to, bro. I don't want to tell me to move fast, move fast, move fast, move fast, move fast, move fast. Here to come to the space. Yeah, we want to know about bored, bro. I'm bored. I want it. You know, well, not find out about with them. Yeah, man. Yeah, find out about with. They say him Arnold. Yeah, but the first name I don't want to give me that. Can't you badge number 2 when you bring me down a station, give me all that. Lock up the vehicle. What the driver for the vehicle? Me, right now, me I own it. Lock up the vehicle. But the man, them say them are going to lock you up because we're there a Bishop yard, bro. They must board, bro. Bro, the man must board. See, grandma say, I shouldn't see we how long. Grandma say how much months.
Of course, that video there has been making the rounds on social media, reigniting conversations around what should happen when members of the police force have this kind of confrontation with members of the public. Clearly, one of the conventional wisdom among attorneys that they've shared widely with many is that you comply and then complain. So we have Alexander Shaw and Anthony Williams, both attorneys at law, and they join us now to help us to navigate these choppy waters. Thank you, gentlemen, for taking the time to be with us here inside Lead Story.
Yeah, good evening. Good evening, Tyrone. Good evening, Counsel. Good evening.
You know,
listeners.
Wonderful. Good to have you guys with us. Now, Anthony Williams, you heard it there. You're told to comply and then complain. But the police, based on what is being said here, they're saying you're not from the area. Is that sufficient grounds to interrogate someone, to detain them?
That is not sufficient grounds to interrogate someone and detain them. In Jamaica, police officers cannot just legally stop and search you at random. They must have what we call reasonable suspicion, either that you commit an offense or you are about to commit an offense or continuing the commission of an offense, or they have a legal warrant, issued by the relevant authorities, usually by the court. Now, to say to a person, be they man or woman, boy or girl, hey, you're not from this area, and we receive information that you're not from this area, it would certainly be a breach of the person's fundamental rights and freedoms as is enunciated in the Charter of Rights, because it makes it very, very clear that persons have the right to freedom of movement, right? And freedom of movement is very, very important. So unless they have these bases to act on, then they can't just go around and do it like that. Police officers must understand that they are also governed by the Jamaica Constabulary Force Act and the relevant section, I believe is section 33, I believe, if my memory serves me right, also fortifies this foundation that you must have reasonable suspicion that a crime is being committed, is continuing to be committed, or you have a warrant. And so they must also understand that if they breach these fundamental rights and freedoms of person, then they can be subject to a lawsuit. And the lawsuit would be false imprisonment, false arrest, or wrongful detention.
So the bar that must be scaled, according to the law, is reasonable suspicion. You must have that basis. Alexander Shaw, what you saw in that video, we've seen a number of videos circulating on social media where people and the police are having these tense exchanges and folks are questioning whether or not their rights are being breached. What sort of redress is available to individuals who feel they may have been victimized in this manner?
Well, Mr. Williams, Anthony just actually mentioned false imprisonment. And so in civil law, you have a claim in false imprisonment. But it's also a violation of your constitutional right to freedom of movement. But you really don't go to the constitutional court if you have other available remedies, and in this case you can always access the court through a claim of false imprisonment.
I'm not certain if you saw the video before today, Alexander Williams. Based on what you've seen there, what's your take on if you're advising Jamaicans if they're approached by the police in this manner, what should they do?
Well, the good thing is that the incident was recorded on camera, but I think it was mentioned earlier, I'm not sure if it's you or Anthony who said it, but it's best to comply and then complain after. And the reason I say this is because you find sometimes that charges are trumped up, charges, for example, of refusing to comply with the police's instructions, or, interfering with the police work, and, a number of charges. You find that these simple charges will actually come when a citizen tries to pretty much interrogate the police about why it is that, he or she is doing.
Are you allowed to do that? Are you allowed to interrogate the police, to quiz them, to say...
Well, you have a right to be informed. And so if it is that you are detained, at the very least, the police should say why he or she is doing what he or she is doing. So the police just can't come and act, as he or she so pleases.
I guess the multi-million-dollar question, though, Alexander Shaw, then would be, is that sufficient grounds on which to state a claim against the state if you're not told why you are being detained?
Yes, because you also have a constitutional right to be informed.
Yes. As a matter of fact, there are other rights, and when a police officer stops somebody or is going to interrogate them, that person has several rights, and they are in no particular order. One, they have the right to an explanation. They need to know why is it that they are being searched or about to be searched or interrogated. They have the right to ask the officer to identify themselves in terms of their name, their rank, their badge station. They have the right to privacy as well. And when I say privacy, I'm referring to in relation to their property. The Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedom explicitly say that. And there's a particular case called HEMAX versus the Attorney General of Jamaica, a very well-known case where a group of policemen stopped the motorists and said that they were just wanting to search. And this is a very famous case that I believe every policeman and woman should by now know. And Justice Batts, who was the judge who delivered the judgment, very good judgment, make it very clear that a policeman or woman or a constable have no legal basis or right to simply stop a vehicle on the basis that, oh, they're just going to search.
Under the Road Traffic Act. And I think he specifically mentioned the Road Traffic Act, that it does not empower them to do so. But we still see this happening. In fact, I recall the police firing back, no pun intended, after that ruling, suggesting that they have that power under other pieces of legislation.
Well, you know, the police can say that some are just pretty ignorant of the law, and some just really don't know. So I'm not surprised why some may maintain that ignorance position. But they're not supposed to do it. And I encourage every police officer, especially the High Command, to circulate the case of He-Mans and their other authorities for them to understand that they just do not have that right. But as a matter of fact, the citizens or any person have the right to remain silent as well. You have the right to remain silent.
That is
and not to incriminate yourself.
That is your right. I give you the final word, Alexander Shaw. I'm out of time.
Yeah, and what I will say though, what I'll add is that, and that is the reason why telling the citizen why he or she was stopped is very important. Because if you're stopping me under the Road Traffic Act and you're saying, well, the Road Traffic Act empowers you to stop and you know, with respect to road traffic offenses and violations, then at the very least, you should articulate that reason. But reasonable suspicion, what the law says is that reasonable suspicion should be articulable, meaning that the police should be able to articulate that reason and not just out of some women fancy because, you know, he or she believes that, oh, well, you might be a criminal. That is not enough. So it's more than a good feeling.
We're out of time. But gentlemen, as always, thank you for your public service. We had there Alexander Shaw and Anthony Williams, both of them attorneys. I appreciate the time and the thoughts. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
All right, that's where we have to leave that segment. When we come back, we're going to talk...
Attention government pensioners, the Accountant General's Department's Life Certificate Drive is coming your way. Look out for us on the following dates: Tuesday, September 1, Morant Villas in St. Thomas; Wednesday, September 2, St. James Methodist Church in Clarendon; Thursday, September 3, Hanover Parish Library; Friday, September 4, Westmoreland Parish Library; Saturday, September 5, Greater Portmore Branch Library; Monday, September 7, St. Mary Parish Library; Tuesday, September 8, St. Anne Parish Library; Wednesday, September 9, Trelawney Parish Library; Thursday, September 10, Portland Parish Library; Friday, September 11, St. Matthew's Anglican Church in St. Elizabeth; and on Saturday, September 12, at the St. Catherine Parish Library in Spanish Town. Remember, drop boxes are also available at parish libraries in Hanover, St.
Thanks so much for staying with us. Now, for many Jamaican families, PATH provides essential support, helping to put food on the table and keep children in school. But for the young people that receive that assistance, the experience can sometimes come with an unintended cost. Tonight, we examine the human side of PATH and ask whether Jamaica can provide support to vulnerable children while protecting their dignity. I'm now being joined by Janine McEwen. He's publicly has said this, so we are not taking tales out of school. He says he was a beneficiary of PATH. Janine McEwen, thanks so very much for joining us. And we're hoping to be joined by Brian Anderson as well, former president of the NSSC. Thank you so much, Janine McEwen. Good to see you again.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
You wrote quite an insightful thread on the social media platform X about how to preserve people's dignity while assisting them. Why did you feel it necessary to put that article out?
Right. So firstly, good evening once more. And again, thank you for having me. When we normally talk about PATH in Jamaica, we often talk about the number, because that's what people want to hear. How many people are enrolled, how many money is being distributed, how many children receive meals, how many families are being supported, and those numbers matter. But there's another number that we don't often talk about, and it's the number of children who put in that line and wondering whether somebody was looking at them differently. And I know that experience personally when I was attending Jonathan Grant High School. I was on the path as my brothers were, and what happened is that many a time we were afraid to really join that long line that separated students who are buying lunch versus those who are collecting for path program. It was, we just didn't want to feel as if we were less than because we were in that line. And I have to say I'm grateful for path. It has helped my family, and I'm sure it has helped many other families. So I don't tell this story to really diminish the program. I tell it because I believe that, when you have personally experienced a public policy, you have a responsibility to help people to understand how and what policy is intended to do.
And I have a problem with that, Jenny McEwen, not with what you're saying, but with what you just explained. And you did point that out in the thread as well, that there are schools where path beneficiaries have to join a separate line in order to collect their lunches. Now, why would anybody do that? Is something I could never understand. Why would you take such a course of action that publicly displays to the world that these individuals are on path? I can't understand it.
I think to their defense, sometimes they want ease of collection for the persons to separate them, because it is a specific meal that you would receive with the ticket. Either you get the food from the canteen or you get a tea and a cocoa bread with boxed drink. So I think the lines were there in an attempt to really allow seamless collection for the students, but many a times they did not know what we were experiencing. They did not understand or did not pay much attention to social protection, or understand the you don't understand the condition or the student. You don't understand what is happening, but you're just there, and sometimes you have bullies in school. They say, "Oh, you're a part program student," and they laugh at us, especially in areas where you had a lot of violence and that disrupt school proceedings by students who live within the area. So it was something that I believe that could have done better, right? Because sometimes you find that the form teacher would have received the tickets. Other times you have to go to the guidance counselor office and join a long line, and that line again, you would be stereotyped and stigmatized just to see it.
Certainly, it's not beyond us to come up with a program of distribution that doesn't single out the path beneficiaries like that. We're now being joined by Brian Anderson. He's a former president of the National Secondary Students Council. Thank you so much for joining us, Brian Anderson.
Yes, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Indeed, these conversations are not new, Brian, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it and how we can improve this kind of public display of humiliation for people who are being helped.
Well, a lot of the time students feel excluded. When they're a part of the path program, they feel like they're less than the persons who are not on the program. And the children who are not on the program often stigmatize them and bully them. So I think that firstly, we really need to always keep a sense of sensitization for schools, regardless of whether it's public or private, as long as a student is on the path program. They should be sensitized as to what the program is, what it's trying to achieve, and what the fundamental goals are. That a child must not be bullied for simply being impoverished or having less than someone else.
Brian, we're not able to bring you up on screen, Brian, because I think you have the auto rotate feature off. If you can do that, because you're displaying almost upside down on our end, and we love for the people of Jamaica to see who's talking to them. If you can turn, I think that should be it. And if you can just give us a little bit of headroom there. Just about right there. Right. So, you were making the point about not continuing this kind of public display of humiliation for people being helped.
Yes. So, as I was saying, students are often bullied because of this. And something that we could do is to really sensitize the students who are not a part of the program, because you should not be bullied for simply not having something to eat. That is simply unfair. Something else that we should do, we should abolish the whole lines thing, where students are separated into different lines and have to collect food separately from persons who are not on path, because that in and of itself creates a sense of isolation, and it can make a child feel separate from persons who have more money than them. Another thing is the whole system of cards, where students would get like a card that like writes $500 on the card, and it's something that students can see, and they would laugh at students. I know that at my school, a student was bullied for having this path card, and I think my school eventually abolished the card because of the severe amounts of bullying that the child faced. Something that we can do instead is to utilize the ID cards, which each school should provide for each student, so that it's less visible to the overall community of the school. There's a lot that we can do to really mitigate this issue.
Absolutely, and the truth is, Brian, is that we run into difficulty because we're trying to reinvent the wheel. What we ought to do is the same means by which the students who are not on path collect their lunches. It's the same means we should just allow for the students who are on path. I don't know that we need to be reinventing the wheel. Let me bring Jenny McEwen back in before we run out of time, because this conversation you started on Twitter last evening, I think it was, if I'm getting the time frame correct. Someone commented on your post and suggested that this is why they're against the plaques being placed on the houses being handed over by the Prime Minister as part of the new social housing program. They're saying, look, we need to maintain the dignity of these individuals. Of course, the Prime Minister has responded to those criticisms, saying not owning a house is the indignity. But the truth is, putting a plaque on a house can also be a mark of indignity as well. How do you see that particular issue?
Well, I had anticipated this question, and I think for adults versus children it's a bit different. And it's the reason why I tried to bring on the point of George Herbert Mead's theory of self, and it helps us to understand that our sense of self is not created entirely by isolation. We develop the understanding of ourselves partly through interaction with each other. So we begin to see ourselves through what Mead described as generalized other, the expectation, the judgment, and the attitude. And we believe society holds towards us. And think about that child standing in the path line. Maybe nobody says you are poor, but the separation itself is communicates something different. I believe with the house,